Today we're having a look at one of the tightest headphones in the whole world. This is the focal Bathys. It costs $699 at the moment I'm filming this video review, although they could be found for some price reductions on some websites. For example, in Romania, they can be found for a bit less on some websites. This is a Bluetooth headphone. It has ANC or active noise cancelling, which means that they will isolate you from the outside noise with an active process where they create a sound wave that is opposite to what is coming from the outside, and then you won't hear the noise. They have an actual battery life of about 20 hours to 25 hours, especially if you are using aptX or if you are using louder volumes, although the company quotes a bit more. If you've ever heard about Focal Audio, they are from France, and you can see this is one of the most beautiful headphones that I've reviewed. The headphone is quite tight, and this is what I said at the beginning of the video. This is one of the tightest headphones in the entire world. So this is the maximum adjustment possible on both sides, and they barely fit my head. It's okay for me, but if you have a head which is any larger than mine, you won't have good comfort with the Focal Bathys. And I think that is quite important. Please look at me. If you think that you may have even a slightly larger head, then don't go for the Focal Bathys because they will not fit. The space inside of the ear cups is not that small though, so my ears have enough space inside. The earpads are on the harder side, but they are comfortable, so they are squishy. You have a good amount of earpad, they are quite deep, and the overall comfort is actually not bad, but I'm concerned about the fact that this is the maximum they can stretch. This being a Bluetooth headphone, you may expect me to say that it is only Bluetooth, but that is not quite true. It has 3 usage modes possible. First off, we have the Bluetooth mode, which has SBC, AAC, and aptX, and even aptX adaptive. That comes with a little caveat though, because smartphones like the S23 Ultra cannot use the aptX protocol. So although this is a high-end smartphone and this is a pair of high-end headphones, they can only use SBC as a connection protocol, which will sound quite bad. You should make sure that your smartphone supports aptX before purchasing the Focal Bathys. Naturally, you may argue that you could upgrade your smartphone, but you generally don't upgrade the smartphone just for a pair of headphones. Also with iPhones, Bluetooth is typically limited at AAC and it doesn't sound quite as good as aptX. So if you have an iPhone, you likely won't have a great experience with any Bluetooth pair of headphones. You should look at wired options, and then this one can come with 2 wired options. So it has a USB dock mode implemented. A USB dock is basically connecting them via the Type-C port on the right ear cup, and you get data from your computer and they act as a sound card. There are a few problems though. So the first one is that the cable is on the right earpiece. That is also true for the line-in cable. So when you sit at your computer, most people are right-handed, see? So this is my right hand. You typically place your hand on the mouse and you move the mouse, you do stuff at the computer, and the cable always gets in the way. So having the cable on the right side is quite unusual. Most headphones, if they have just one cable, have it on the left side. Then we have a problem with the USB dock. So I tried it with multiple computers, multiple USB ports, and multiple ways of using it. But when you are watching content that stresses the computer even the slightest, you will get sonic dropouts, which are quite uncomfortable. You see, I have discomfort even explaining the phenomenon. The sound dropouts are like you get the typical sound and then it stutters, and that is quite obnoxious, to be honest. I don't want to have that in my music. Having a very powerful computer doesn't fix that. My computer has an AMD R9 processor together with an RTX 4090, and I still have those issues. Those issues are present even when I'm just playing a YouTube video, so you'll most definitely notice them. The line-in mode has the best sound. So when you are using the line-in, you double amp the signal. They cannot be used with the line-in if they don't have any battery, so they are consuming their own battery to use the line-in signal, which is questionable because I'm not sure if they have an ADC and the dock inside, but I think that the dock is the one who is struggling when using them as a USB dock. The sound is quite different between the 3 modes, so you are getting 3 different presentations. On the Bluetooth input, you have a smooth, lean, relaxed sound with not quite that much treble, but a heavy, thick bass with a smoother mid-range and a pretty pleasing overall tonality. It is quite fun to listen to, but it is a bit fuzzy, the detail is not the greatest, and you have that Bluetooth compression happening, which you will hear. So the Bluetooth input is the least audiophile and the most commercial sounding of the three inputs. The Bluetooth input sounds like most headphones sound in the price range, so it is a mixed bag. Before we talk about the two other inputs, we should mention the ANC, or active noise cancelling. This headphone has one of the best ANC modes out there. You won't hear a single thing from the outside. Even if a crying baby was right next to you, you wouldn't hear it. That is how great they are with the ANC, or active noise cancelling. I'm quite pleased with that because I fly quite a bit, and when flying a plane, there is always a crying baby, and having a headphone with ANC is always an awesome option. I would recommend also checking out some true wireless IEMs with ANC because they are much cheaper and usually more practical to use, but in an airplane in particular, I wouldn't want to have my ears clogged with an IEM. I think that the changes in pressure might affect your eardrums. The ANC works in all modes, so you can use ANC when using them Bluetooth as a USB dock, and you can even use ANC when using those wired via the line-in input. That is quite cool because usually ANC is only limited for the Bluetooth input on most headphones. The ANC consumes quite a bit of power, but it is so effective and it doesn't change the sound one bit that I typically just leave it on. You can turn the ANC on or switch it to transparency by pressing the button for it. And if you press the transparency button, you'll hear a lot of noise. The transparency mode has a ton of noise because the amplifier that amplifies the signals from the outside has quite a bit of self noise or gain. We then have the USB dock input, which sounds the brightest, the sharpest, and the most detailed, but you cannot use your computer for watching videos or for doing anything that strains the computer and especially the GPU for some reason. I couldn't find why. There is no driver available, so I cannot use a different driver to make sure that doesn't happen. And the app for the smartphone just didn't recognize the Focal Bathys on my smartphone. So I installed the Focal NIM app. It did not recognize the headphones. From what I understood, there should be some equalizer options available, but I couldn't find them. So I'm describing the sound as it is by default. We then have the line input, which I think is the best option if you are an audiophile, if you want to get the best sound out of them. You are kind of double amping, so at least the amplifier inside of them has to be turned on. If you turn them off entirely, they will not work even from the line input. At least in my experience, they just didn't work. There was no sound. The line input sounds really detailed, bright, sharp, very energetic, and the soundstage is wide, holographic. You get that super good spatial placement, an excellent instrument separation, and overall they just sound like a sound you'd expect from Focal Audio. I think they are quite worth the money if you are looking for a good audiophile headphone from Focal, but they are not worth the money if you want a sound which is audiophile and Bluetooth. You cannot use them Bluetooth and get that audiophile experience. At this price point, you can grab a large number of other products, including some of the best high-end flagship headphones, or at least not flagships, but high-end options. For example, HiFiMan Ananda Nano. And Ananda Nano is not closed back, so this is closed back. That is a big advantage and a big selling point for them. With Ananda Nano, you get a much sharper sound with better detail, less bass though, so the Focal Bathys has quite a good bass. Although the bass is not very high in amount, so it is not a bass head headphone by definition, it is very deep, it reaches good in the sub bass, downwards to about 30 Hz. It provides a good amount of impact and a good substance and a thicker sound to the mid-range. While with Ananda Nano you get a much sharper, brighter sound, still with a good bass extension, but not quite as good as with the Focal Bathys. That being said, I prefer the Ananda Nano for its resolution and vocal reproduction, while the Focal Bathys sounds more blended in together. The vocal reproduction is better for female voices, and for some reason the Focal Bathys tends to not emphasize with male voices as much, especially with lower pitched male voices, where you'll hear the male voice being drowned backwards, singing behind any female singer or any male with a higher timbre voice. And the soundstage of the Focal Bathys is also a mixed bag. So you get a presentation where the voice is always somewhat forward, somewhat near you, but you get the drums being pushed backwards, somewhere in the background. You get the guitars playing kind of stereo laterally, and that happens for every single song, so it doesn't take into account how the song was mixed, recorded. Intimate songs will sound like this, wide songs will sound like this, pretty much every single song would have this specific presentation. It's not a bad thing, but it's something that you have to get used to. At the end of the day, you may be wondering if this focal Bathys headphone is worth purchasing. For its price point of $699 US, you really have to consider whether you need a closed back headphone and if you need ANC and if you need a Bluetooth headphone. If you have a smartphone with aptX so that you can use them at their best, if you are willing to put up with the battery life, because you'll have to charge them once in a while. I was able to use them for about a week without charging, with about 2 to 3 hours of usage per day, so they last for about 20 hours, even though it's not 30 hours, 20 hours. It's quite good. The maximum volume is very good, so you can get them very loud, they sound very detailed at maximum loudness, and there is no distortion. If you have a head that would fit them, please try to test them in a store because they are tight. And if they would fit on your head, they would probably fit in with your musical preferences as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are enjoying your time at Audiophile Heaven, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye!